All right. I hope everybody's doing well today. All right, so let's get started with my TED Talk. I want you to think about the last conversation you had that made you feel genuinely seen. You weren't given a like, you weren't given a thumbs up reaction, and you certainly weren't given a read receipt notification. I'm talking about a conversation in which someone looked at you, heard you, and made you feel and walk away like you actually mattered. I ask you all in the audience to reflect for a little bit and think of a conversation that you had that exudes this type of behavior. Now I ask you again, how long did it take you to think of one? My name is Ludwig, and I want to talk about something that sounds deceptively simple and naive, but is one of the most complex challenges of our generation, and that is being social in a generation in an era that promised us connection. Okay, so today, 5.4 billion people use the internet worldwide. That's over 67% of humanity. Devices, like the iPhone here, allow us to connect with anyone at any time. Apps like Instagram, Discord, Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok, all allow us to connect in our own unique ways. The list of apps goes on and on. I'd be here all day talking about them. And the promises that these technologies gave us were extraordinary and extravagant. Barriers of cultural and geographical significance would immediately be lifted. A teenager in Karachi, Pakistan could easily connect with a teenager in the United States. But here's the paradox. We are the most connected generation while also being the loneliest. Now, in 2023, the US Surgeon General issued a formal health advisory stating that loneliness was now to be a public health epidemic. It was comparable in side effects to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. A meta-analysis of over 308,000 participants found that those who had weak social relationships were more likely, and 50% more likely, to experience premature death, making loneliness more dangerous and more significant than physical inactivity and obesity. Now, whether or not you take these statistics to be real or not, that is up to you. But the fact of the matter is that loneliness can creep up on anyone at any time. And someday it might creep up to you as well. So the question is, what do we do? What can we do about, or how can we change going from the era and age of connection to the age of loneliness? Now, to answer that, I'd like to tell you my story. So in March 2020, I was around in the 5th grade. I wasn't antisocial. I was more of extrovert. I had a lot of friends, and we would walk home from the bus stop every day from school and simply talk about our days. On the weekends, we'd plan extravagant Nerf wars and water balloon battles. If that strikes a bell from your elementary school days, it'd be great. I also used the weekends to hang out with them, to play video games from day to night, to hang out with them, have sleepovers, etc. Now, I never thought that these days would change. I never thought I'd live in an age where all of these things would be inaccessible to me, or be out of reach to me. But then, as you all know, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Now, I'm sure we all have fond memories of the first health advisory that came out regarding this conflict. Now, the children in our community were very excited of the news. They didn't want this week or 2 weeks to end. They never wanted to go back to school. They wanted this fun to continue. And I was one of them. I mean, can you blame me? Now, the thing is, this anticipation started mounting. This anticipation of finally being able to come back to school and meet our teachers once again. To meet the people that may not be within physical proximity of us. And as days turned the anticipation rose. Health advisories kept coming, and they kept on coming. And everybody was left in pandemonium. When are we going to get back to school? When am I going to see the person I want to see the most? And weeks then turned to months. Months then, with a snap of the finger, led to us being given the news that all school would be headed online and that the chances of meeting our teachers once again would be nullified, gone within an instant. Now, let's fast forward a year or two in the future, and let's just say my physical state and mental state were deteriorating fast. I was a train wreck. I had started to rely on the internet as a coping mechanism to help with the isolation that was brought about by the pandemic and quarantines. All activities that I did were on the internet. I'd spend hours upon hours upon hours talking alongside people around the world playing video games. But I can bet you $1 million that I couldn't tell you their names, what they wanted to do, and just their overall worldview. And I can bet $1 million that these same people couldn't tell a thing about me. Now, the thing is that this had consequences. It cost me dearly. The speaker that you're seeing right now wouldn't have been able, or started as somebody that wasn't able to come in front of a person in general, couldn't communicate with somebody without feeling empty and hollow inside. You couldn't tell me to have a genuine conversation with someone. I always felt like there was something missing in my dialogue, something empty. There was an awkwardness that persisted and ate away at me. And I want to tell you all that my experience is not unique by any means. There were millions upon millions of teenagers that experienced the same things as I did. And I'm sure that all of you have firsthand accounts of what happened through those 3-ish years. Now, I didn't return to in-person schooling until the 8th grade. It took me 3 years to come back. And in those 3 years, I realized I needed to make a change. So, now I want to kind of contextualize what I have experienced to ask, why does digital connection fail us in this kind of in this new and technology-driven age that we live in today? And I want to talk about how the brain works specifically. So when we talk about human connection, right, the brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, whenever we have an in-person conversation. It creates trust, and it dips our cortisol levels, our stress. Now, an interesting study by the University of Wisconsin found that kids, whoever they may be, participants, when they were exposed to their mother's voice on wherever they were, and given a reassuring message, their oxytocin levels dropped significantly. But when the same message in a different medium, through a text message, was given to these children, the oxytocin levels remained the same, and their cortisol spiked. The same medium, but it was in a different context. In a different medium, but it was the same message nonetheless. Isn't that interesting? So, again, humans evolved for human interaction. They weren't meant to be doing things digitally. Now, another thing that I want to talk about in tandem with this is a concept called social snacking, in which participants, I'm sure we all have done this at some point, take little bites of dopamine or oxytocin and is left with a feeling of emptiness, or they simply don't know what to do other than continue their actions. This can be in the form of whether they're scrolling through social media, or they're looking at photos, reacting on a blog post, etc. Now, one pretty big statistic that I want to lead you here, or lead you to here, is those that spend more than 2 hours on social media have twice the odds for perceived social isolation. And that means that these same young adults that were tested in the study, they are subject to the same side effects that we talked about previously. Now, the thing is, we're not failing because our technology is working or is not working. It's rather the contrary. We're failing because technology is working as intended. It's intended to keep us looped, to keep us within its arm's reach, and not to keep us connected. Now, former Facebook Vice President Chamath Palihapitiya said in 2017 in an interview that the system, this dopamine-driven system that they have created on their application, is not connecting, but driving society apart. Now, I think it's safe to assume that a rebalancing is in order. We as humans are vulnerable and we have lost social skills during the pandemic. We can't show the non-curated part of ourselves that we previously could. And we certainly don't have the required skills due to the pandemic taking away years from our natural experiences. So what do we do to make ourselves and our social lives a bit better? I present 3 actions for you to do, for you to take immediately after we leave from this TEDx conference. And the first one is to prioritize being present. Now, I'm sure everyone in this room has had one instance where they felt like they didn't give whoever they were talking to enough presence of mind. They were engrossed with another thing. But a University of Essex study finds that those who either have their phones out on the table or are using it constantly during conversation, the person that they're talking to is given a clear indicator through, and this is tracked by hormonal activity and all the other sort, but they are given a clear warning sign that signals that they should not continue with a conversation. It is a warning sign that suggests that something else is more important than our conversation at the moment, and we should stop. So I urge you, put the phone away. Not on the table, but away. The second actual item that I have for you all today is to be comfortable with going deep. Now, what do I mean by this? So, I'm sure we all have these kind of little surface level interactions that we have on a day-to-day basis, whether that be talking to a barista or maybe even conversing with a classmate that you're not really familiar with. But what I ask of you with this point is to not just continue along with your, hey, how are you, type of conversations. Dig deeper. How was your weekend? What did you do? Continue after they give their response. Because everybody stops at the surface. Nobody is interested nowadays in asking and going beyond the surface level. You will be surprised by how many people are willing to tell you their stories, willing to tell you their perspectives, and willing to just share with the general populace. And the third and final actual item, The third and final actual item that I want you to take is maintaining your social health like your physical health. Now, I'm not sure if this applies to everyone in the crowd, but I imagine that we all have these fitness trackers on our wrists constantly, whether it be like an Apple Watch or a Samsung Galaxy Watch or whatever. We can track our steps and make sure whether or not we are in the right direction in terms of our health. And some of you may have gym memberships that you constantly use for your benefit to improve yourself. But if I were to ask you, when was the last time you called somebody, whether it be a relative that you haven't kept in touch with, or if it's someone that you've been meaning to talk to, just in general? I don't think a single person would have given the same intentionality that they do to their physical health to their social health. So what I ask of you is this. Talk to someone new. Talk to someone that you haven't been able to catch up with in a long time. Make sure that they know that you are significant, that they are significant, and that your relationship with them is significant. Now, I want you to go back to the thought, the conversation that you had that was a model for you back in the first slide-ish of this talk. Odds are that this conversation wasn't done on social media. This was more important than any of your social media notifications will ever be. Now, let's look back at the facts. Loneliness is spreading at a rate that is insane, to be frank. It is quite common nowadays to find somebody that isn't willing or isn't comfortable talking. So I urge you, we are a generation that has previously thought of being the most connected. But we are now rapidly in a trajectory in which this reality is no longer possible. We can be remembered as a generation that got used by the technologies we created, or we can be the generation that adapted to strife, adapted to problem, and adapted to the technologies we created to maintain social health, irregardless of the technologies, irregardless of the problems. Thank you.